Hi everyone, thanks for joining in. So today we are going to be talking about finding the roots. Okay, so this is my first video. So when we are going to be finding the roots, we're going to be looking at it in this quadratic equation right here. Sometimes you will see it equal to 0. Some of your worksheets may already have it equal to 0. If not, you can just go ahead and equal it to 0. The point is that we are going to be solving for x. So let's just go ahead and get into factoring, and you will see what I'm talking about when we get into finding the actual roots. Okay, and the roots are where in a graph where the graph will touch on the x-axis. Okay, the roots are where it's going to end up touching. All right, so that's the point. That's the roots. Another word for roots is going to be finding the zeros, the roots, the zeros. We're going to be solving for x, the x-intercepts, things like that. So let's just go ahead and get into it, all right? So in our first example, we have x squared plus 10x plus 16. So let's go ahead and figure out what our a, b, and c is. So we already know how to factor, so we're just going to go ahead and go through this. So we're going to do our A, our B, and our C, okay? So our A goes with anything with the x squared, our B is anything with just our x, and this is our C. So our A is our 1, okay? Our B is 10, and our C is 16. The next step, okay? We have to determine what our A times C is, okay? Our A is 1 times our C is 16, and 1 times 16 is 16. And then let's go ahead and box our B, okay? Because that's important. All right, now let's go ahead and get into our next step, and I'll go ahead and do that in a different color so you know. This is our little puzzle piece. So blank times blank. What two numbers can multiply to 16? This is our A times our C. Let me scoot my camera over, I'm sorry. And what are the same two numbers that can add to our B, which is 10? Okay, so let's talk about our factors of 16. What two numbers can multiply to 16? So let's write them off to the side. 1 times 16. 2 times 8, 3 times 6, 4 times 4, okay? So we wrote all of our factors out, okay? Now, let's determine which ones can add to a positive 10. So we know these two numbers have to multiply to positive 16, so being positive and positive works, and they have to add to a 10. So let's figure it out. Okay, so we're going to leave them all positive. So 1 plus 16 would be 17. 17. 2 plus 8 is actually 10. Wow, that's it. This is it. So we can actually, fill in our blanks with 2 and 8. And 2 and 8, because that would work. Because even if we check the rest of them, 3 plus 6 is 9, 4 plus 4 is 8. We know that we need it to match to this 10. So now we have this. So let's get into factor by grouping. That's our next step. Okay. And remember that these two pieces right here, these two new numbers replace our B. It replaces our B, so we can have 4 terms. So we're going to go ahead and take our A, and we're going to write it down here as x squared, okay, x squared, plus 2x plus 8x, and then plus our c. And our c is 16 plus 16, okay? Now we're going to be factoring by grouping. So we have this piece here, so we're going to say x squared plus 2x, and then we have this pair right here, 8x plus 16. Let's go ahead and draw in our ladders, okay? So what do these two have in common? They both have an x. So we're going to pull out our x. So x squared divided by x is going to be x plus 2x divided by x. And remember, the x cancels out, so we are left with a 2. And over here, what do these two have in common? We can pull out an 8. Okay, so 8x divided by 8 is going to be 1, or we're left with our x, plus 16 divided by 8 is going to be 2. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and write our answer. So we have x plus 8, so we're going to write x plus 8 times, and these two match, x plus 2. Now, I know in other videos we have done this, but now we are getting down into finding our roots, finding our zeros, finding our x-intercepts. So this is where this is new, okay? It's new, but it's not hard, so don't worry. So this is where we are finding our roots. And that's why it's so important that we have this equal to 0 up here, because what we're going to do is we're going to take these two pieces and we're going to set them equal to 0, okay? And we're going to solve for x. So I have x plus 8 equals 0. And I also have x plus 2 equals 0. Now we just took these two pieces, split them up. Now we're just solving for x. Not bad, okay? So how do we solve for x? What's the first step we're going to do? So we need to go ahead and we can just kind of draw our, our line, and we can say, oh, we got to get 8 to this side. So if it's plus 8, we're going to say minus 8 and minus 8, and that cancels out. So x is going to equal negative 8 here. And then for this one, I'm going to also do the same thing, draw our line. If it's plus 2, we're going to say minus 2, because we want these two to cancel out. So x is going to equal 0 minus 2 is negative 2. So our x is negative 8. Our x here is negative 2. And we're going to go ahead and write that as a point. So when we write our points, we know whatever goes in this slot is going to be our x, and whatever goes here is going to be our y. So x is going to be negative 8, and our y is 0. Same here. Our x is negative 2, and our y is 0. And those are your roots. And that's how you find the actual roots. So it's important to put them in point form, because like writing them as if they were points, because you would end up graphing these, okay? Now, let's go ahead and look at another example. All right, so I'm going to erase this. Okay, I'm erasing. So our next example is going to be 3x squared minus 2x minus 5, okay? And, like I said, let's just go ahead and equal it to 0. And some of your worksheets will have it already to 0. And it's kind of nice, so when we are finding our roots, we always remember we are trying to get, the two factors, equal to 0, okay? The product after we factor everything out. So just equal it to 0. So let's go ahead and look at this. Do we have a GCF? No, we do not have a GCF. So we're going to go ahead and start our factoring process so we can find our roots. So A, B, C, okay? A, because it's with the x squared, B, because it's with the x, and C is going to be with our negative 5. So our A is 3, our B is negative 2, and our C is negative 5. Okay? Next step, we need to find our A times C. Our A is 3 times C, which is negative 5. 3 times negative 5 is going to be negative 15. Okay? And let's go ahead and box our B. And remember, when we wrote our A, B, and C, we always take the sign with it. That's if you kind of forgot from our other videos. I just want to point that out. Now, let's go ahead and get into our next step. Our next step is we're going to go ahead and fill out our little puzzle. So what two numbers can multiply to equal negative 15, and those same two numbers can add to negative 2? Okay, that's our B. I'm moving the camera over. So this was our A times C, and this is our B. Okay? Now, the factors of 15, okay? Let's write them off to the side. And we'll come back to the negative, so let's just write what two numbers multiply to 15. 1 times 15, 2, no. 3 times 5, and that's it, okay? So we know that these two have to multiply to be a negative, so that means one of these columns, either this one or this one, is going to have to be negative. Now, I know that the answer is going to be a negative when they're added together, which means the bigger one, the bigger number takes the sign. So we're going to go ahead and attach that negative to the bigger number. So 1 minus 15 is going to be a negative 14, right? So that one doesn't work. 3 minus 5 gives you a negative 2. Perfect. It's this one right here. So we're going to go ahead and fill in our blanks. So 3 times negative 5 is negative 15. And 3 plus negative 5 gives us a negative 2. Perfect. Those two numbers work. Now let's go ahead and get into factor by grouping, because remember that these two numbers replace our B. Because remember, when we factor by grouping, we need 4 terms. So these two are we're kind of splitting this into 2 pieces, okay? So let's go ahead and look at it. So we're going to take our A, which is 3x squared. We're going to go ahead and take our new B value, which is going to be plus 3x and minus 5x. And then we're going to go ahead and keep our C. Our C is very important, minus 5. Now we have these, now we're going to be factoring by grouping now that we have all 4 pieces. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and take this and say 3x squared plus 3x over here, and we're going to say negative 5x minus 5, and we're going to go ahead and draw in our ladders. Okay, now what do these two have in common? I'm seeing that they have a 3 in common, and I'm also seeing that they have an x in common, okay? So now we're going to go ahead and divide. So 3x squared divided by 3x. So 3 divided by 3 is 1, and x squared divided by x leaves us with an x. Plus 3x divided by 3x is going to be 1, okay? Now let's look at this one over here. I see that I've got this negative right here, so I know I'm going to pull out a negative. And what else do these two have in common? They both have a 5, okay? So when I pull out this negative, I'm changing all the signs in here. So if this is a negative, it's going to turn into a positive. If this is a negative, it's going to turn into a positive. So negative 5x divided by negative 5 is going to leave you with just an x. And negative 5 divided by negative 5 is going to be a plus 1. Perfect, right? So now let's work on our answer. So we have 3x and negative 5, right? So we're going to say 3x minus 5 times, and these two match, perfect, x plus 1, okay? Now we know we have to equal them to 0, like what we did at the top right here when we equal it to 0, like we did up here when we equaled it to 0. So what we are going to end up doing is splitting these two into 2 pieces and solving for x, okay? So if we have 3x minus 5 equals, so this is 3x minus 5 equals 0, and this x plus 1 equals 0, Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to go ahead and solve for x. So I'm going to go ahead and just draw my line here so we know what we're doing. Work away from the variable. So if it's minus 5, we're going to say, okay, plus 5 plus 5. That cancels out. We're left with a 3x equals 0 plus 5 is 5. Okay, now I know that the number and the variable are stuck together. That means it's multiplication. So the opposite of multiplication is going to be division. Divide by 3, divide by 3, and x is going to equal 5/3. Okay, now let's go over here and solve for x. I'm going to go ahead and draw my line. And we're going to move this 1 over here. So if it's plus 1, we do the opposite. Minus 1, minus 1. Cancels out. We're going to be left with our x equals 0 minus 1 is negative 1. Awesome. Let's go ahead and write it as a point. Okay, so we have a fraction here. It's okay to leave it as a fraction. Perfect, right? So x is going to equal 5/3, comma 0. Okay, remember your x and your y. And here we have our x is negative 1, comma 0 is your y. And these are our roots or our zeros or our x-intercepts. And that's your answer for this one.